Professor Sanal Mohan sir, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for giving interview for Dalit Camera. So there is this word called Kerala modernity. There's no Tamil modernity, Maharashtra modernity. But what is this Kerala modernity?
That's actually a fascinating question. Of course, people have been using this Kerala modernity as a particular kind of situation of maybe 19th and 20th centuries. As historians speak about that. So let us think about how the new ideas, new tastes, new attitudes, etc. I mean, you can really go on increasing the kind of ideas underneath this rubric of Kerala modernity, but by and large, it would refer to new forms of economy, society, intellectual endeavors, and so on. So that's what actually marked Kerala's modernity. But probably the same thing is true for other regions also. As much as we talk about the Tamil region in terms of, you see that 20th century mobilizations, or let's say the 19th century developments in the Madras presidency and so on. So there is definitely a case for talking about modernity in that region. Likewise, I'm sure we could also talk about the Maharashtrian case from the days of Mahatma Phule down to the subsequent periods, the late 19th century histories, and that continues even in the 20th century, the kind of stuff that we are all familiar with. So broadly, those changes of mid to late 19th centuries that continues throughout the 20th. In fact, for certain areas, the mid 19th century could be a misnomer, because the whole 19th century had been undergoing, kind of intellectual churning, intellectual transformation, economic transformation, and so on. So the case of Bengal is, in fact, I would say that I use an outlandish phrase, maybe. It's a textbook case as far as India is concerned, isn't it? So we all are reading about, or probably our sense of this modernity grew out of the researches that were done on the experiences in Bengal. So what I want to suggest is that most regions of India, particularly those regions that became the center of colonial transformation, they all had undergone the kind of changes that are captured under the rubric of modernity. So therefore, possibly one could talk about modernity for Kerala as well. And that's how I look at it. And there were other terms also, the contesting terms and phrases, like last few years, I mean, maybe it was there for some time. In this country, I'm talking about the Malayalam speaking country, people have been talking about Kerala Renaissance, for instance. Like maybe it was an adoption of this particular kind of term from the histories of Bengal Renaissance, for example. So I think the genealogy could be, identified like that. So in many of those public statements in the last few years, we also heard about this particular thing, as I said, the Kerala Renaissance, as almost like a synonym for Kerala modernity. So therefore, these two terms have come to stay, and the specifics can be debated. Why one particular phase of history is understood as a phase of Renaissance, or why we talk about Kerala modernity for a particular phase of its history. So, and its specific details, etc., can be discussed. Those are terms which are used in public discourses, of all kinds, with very specific implications and so on. So that is how I think I look at this as a response to your question.
So, in your book about slavery,
Yeah.
was there a slavery in Kerala? Can you narrate that one and what you have found and what interested you to enter into that field? What drove you, the driving force?
Yeah, that's a very what I can say. It's really a difficult question to answer in that way. So let me just break up all these smaller points that would give answers to your larger question. I would say that your question has different layers of meaning embedded in it. So one of which is what kind of early ideas I had. Well, that's a difficult thing to ask, or a difficult thing for me to answer. If I reflect on this, when I was landlord while they were still living in the Travancore region, because we subsequently my parents migrated to Malabar, where I was born, and we were all raised there. But as a small boy, only once I heard this being stated by my mother, and I did not know the implications of that. And probably that was the case with many people of my parents' generation. What I am suggesting is that their grandparents, the people of my parents' generation, could definitely talk about their grandparents' generation having undergone this experience of slavery, because they were themselves enslaved people, bought and sold by the landlords. Because the people I am referring to were all, and that the generation which my parents referred to as their grandparents, all of them had been living in the southern part of Kerala, which is the colonial period referred to as the Travancore state, the kingdom of Travancore, which was a princely state. So only my parents' generation moved out of this place to Malabar. So, and some research which I did subsequently, mostly based on the narratives which I collected in the villages, confirmed to this. This I did quite a few years later. My first idea of people being bought and sold was this kind of statement that my mother made. But then I did not think about its implications when I was a school going child of that time. But years later, when I did research of this kind, those statements came back to me. That's what I am saying. Now, after I started my academic researches, or say serious kind of study of history from the period of my postgraduate studies through MPhil, so I was interested in a kind of critical histories and kind of social sciences that were available at that point of time. But obviously we don't hear much of slavery in those books at that point of time, even if we refer to radical variants of social sciences available in the early 80s, etc. And something that I could recollect was some Malayalam stuff which I read, some books by the late historian Chandaraseri, for example. So he wrote this biography of Iyengar, which I read while I was a MS student. Then another instance of academic reading on slavery was the book of Professor Sharada Mani, which was titled as Emergence of a Slave Caste, Puliyas of Kerala. That was a late 70s, early 80s book. So there were a few books of that kind that actually talked about this. But actually, as I said, in the 80s, the kind of critical histories that were available for us to read, what stands out was these subaltern studies volumes, early volumes, etc. While it talked about the questions of subalternity and all that, there was a real lack of engagement with questions of slavery. Probably because that was not an immediate concern for the scholarship of that time. Or, obviously, subsequently we know that some of those subaltern historians themselves worked in the area of slavery. But I do not know if I'm right to say that the histories of slavery or experiences of enslavement, etc., were not something that really fired the imagination of the radical scholarship of that time. Now, so therefore, when I started my academic research and so on, also I was interested in reading the histories of agrarian societies and so on. So, and definitely I came across the debates in the area of Indian social sciences, which was famously referred to as model production. So there are references to what could be thought of as unfree labor or coercive labor, and the notions like extra economic coercion and so on, but not a deeper analysis of this. Obviously, we also come across the writings of scholars who dealt with the labor oppression in Mirasidari areas, about the system of labor control in the Mirasi areas of Tamil Nadu and many other regions of South India. But what I am suggesting is that there was a singular absence of works in the area of slavery. Then when I started my research, which led to this work in the area of slavery, that happened quite late, the early 90s, when I relocated myself to the Mahatma Gandhi University, where I taught for quite some time. I was interested in the kind of stuff that was already available, all these critical histories and so on. And as I was located in this part of Kerala, Kottayam, I knew about some of the social movements, histories of oppressed caste communities here. And because by that time I was also familiar with some of the writings of that period on slavery. So I thought that I myself should do some research in this area. And that's the time when I visited once with another colleague of mine. He's not a historian, he was a faculty member of the School of Behavioral Sciences here, my colleague Dr. Baburaj. So he had some relatives in Tiruvalla, and once he said he was going there, and we were going to this small village named Odara in Tiruvalla, which was close to the headquarters of PRDS, and I went along with him because he knew people there. And one evening, as we went there, so he contacted some of his friends, and we went to the PRDS headquarters. And that's when I got to know more about it. Although I read very small pieces about this movement. This was my first visit to of the PRDS, and they were very welcoming and very friendly and very warm. And one of their functionaries, a very elderly person, he explained to us very briefly the history of the movement and so on. Then I was interested in knowing more about that. This was sometime, I guess, in 1994, I guess. And subsequently, I tried to read more about it and understand more about this movement's history. Then I knew that people were talking a lot about slavery in that particular movement. And then I wanted to know, because by that time I had already started thinking about this, and I thought I will do some research, formal research in this particular area. If I could enroll myself as a PhD researcher at MG University in Kottayam. And to cut short this whole narrative, I would suggest that's a time when I thought I will really look at the history of slavery. And the crucial question was this. Although I hear a lot about slavery, as people were narrating this, as we approached them, I wanted to know how much slavery was in the official records, etc. So therefore, to me, from what I heard as a young boy to what I heard as a postgraduate student, and then what I heard or understood from my listening to the people of the Sabha, PRDS, all of them referring to instances of slavery on these very differentiated occasions. I heard from different people. Then, as a researcher, I wanted to know how much of this was of all this slavery that people have been referring to. I wanted to know how much this was in the official records. That took me to doing research in different archives or different archival repositories and so on. And that led me to the writing of my PhD thesis, and out of which this book, which Devi just mentioned, evolved. So therefore, if I connect the dots, so I begin from here. I began from this occasional kind of statements my mother made, and which stayed with me, and then the kind of readings that I had of historians who worked in this area, or sociologists who worked in this area, mostly on Kerala, I'm saying. And then through the kind of interaction I had with the people of the PRDS community, listening to what they have told me. So all of this instilled this whole idea of trying to look in my own way as a researcher in history to know more about it. That's how I went into this field. But once I reached it, then I found that unlike what people have been talking about, we really have a huge amount of materials actually. But the only thing is that we look at the right places. So as much as we can, we go to these places and then look for materials. Then obviously this information, would be ready. I mean, I would not say that readily available, but this information would be available. So a lot more needs to be done. In fact, if you look at the kind of new materials being published by Dutch scholars working in the area of slavery, and I mean they have been using this lot of Dutch sources, and now I know there are very many young people doing this research because of the KCHR this collaborative research with institutions in Amsterdam. At least few people are now undertaking this research, and I know some young students who have just finished their post graduation, etc., doing this research. One of my students, actually, Ajoy Matthew, is I think currently with the Central University in Kerala, Kasaragod. Central University, Kerala, Kasaragod. So these young people are interested in it, and we also have early career scholars like Vinel Paul doing this sort of research. So on the whole, what I am saying is that we really want to look at the materials, and those materials are there. And to me, what has happened perhaps was that when I started this research, I don't think there were anybody doing this kinds of research based in Kerala. So therefore, probably I followed the leads given by Professor Sharda Mani, Professor Kusmana, and so many others who worked in this area. And I think the fortunate thing probably was that I looked at one of the books of a theologian social scientist who wrote on the Protestant Christianity in Kerala, Dr. Gladstone, Reverend Dr. Gladstone. He was a bishop of Church of South India. And that was a very interesting book because he had consulted with the materials kept in missionary archives in the School of Oriental and African Studies, etc. So when I read that book and looked at the bibliography, so I came to know that those repositories really contained a huge amount of materials on all these things. Obviously, these are in the context of missionary activities in Kerala, so mostly in the southern part of Kerala, these materials were generated from. So I thought that if ever I get a chance to explore these materials, that would be great. So what I would suggest is that I could get a sense of the availability of archival materials other than that were probably available in the state archives or the government repositories. And when I started my research, I soon realized that except a very few individuals like Reverend Gladstone, not many scholars working in the history of Kerala had consulted these missionary sources and so on. But I'm sure that some of those scholars who worked on Kerala, who were based in Europe, had consulted this, but not many others. So therefore, as I said, my idea was to connect with whatever I heard in the field, if that word could be used, with that of what could possibly be there in the archives. This was a kind of thing which I did. It's almost like a movement back and forth kind of from the field to the archives kind of situation. That provided me with a lot of possibilities. And now another point which is part of this was that sometime I think the early 2000s, it was in 2002 that I was named as Charles Wallace India Fellow as a visitor to the University of London's excellent School of Oriental and African Studies. So it was Professor Dilip Menon who named me as a fellow, but luckily everything came out, and that gave me the tremendous opportunity to work in the two major archives. One was the Council of World Mission Archives at University of London, and then at School of Oriental and African Studies, and then the Church Mission Society Special Collection at University of Birmingham. The other repository that I consulted was India Office, so in London. So these three institutions actually gave me immense resources to think about it. So this is how I wish to state as how I came across these materials to write about slavery.